Good morning. Happy Friday morning. Clearly it is Casual Friday here today. Welcome to your Daily Hope Booster. Today I would like to talk about something related to pathways thinking. So hope theory, which is part of the science of hope, is goals plus agency thinking, which is your internal motivation, plus pathways thinking, which is your ability to find alternative solutions to overcome the barriers and obstacles that are going to get in the way in life. So I'd like to talk about pathways thinking and how you can use and grow your pathways thinking to help reduce anxiety. As we know, anxiety is prevalent right now, and I imagine that you must be feeling a heightened sense of anxiety just based on the unknown of the future of what's to come. And that's the definition of anxiety. Clearly very loose definition of anxiety, but it is just when you are worrying about the unknown future and the what ifs of what's going to happen in the future. So one of the solutions that Hope Theory speaks about to reduce anxiety is the idea of gaming it out. So scenario planning, right? Sports teams use this technique to figure out how a game is going to go based on what they already know, and they think about all the alternative solutions and all the plays that they can do to overcome or to achieve those solutions. Strategy folks do it, right, in business, where they look at all the market outcomes or the financial outcomes, and they decide which is the best way to go that's going to produce the most return on their investment. And we humans do it, right? We even unconsciously, we think about what is going to happen in the future and how we can prevent that. And there's a reason we do it. Our brains want to be as efficient as possible. So how our brains work, again, super loosely, is when we come into a situation, our energy bars in our brain go up, right? Our electrical impulses go up. Our brain recognizes whether this scenario is familiar, whether it's routine, whether they have a habit they can follow. It can follow. And if it does, if it's something they've come across before, a similar scenario that your brain has come across before, the energy levels will go down and your brain will go into sort of conservation mode. It knows what to do, so it doesn't need as much energy bars, and away it goes. If it comes into a scenario where it's unfamiliar, it doesn't know what to do, that energy stays up. Those electrical impulses stay up while it figures out what the best scenario is. And that's where your body stays in that heightened level of awareness, of anxiety. And so if we can game out, if we can pick out all the different alternatives that could possibly happen and give some scenarios on how to overcome those issues, how to beat those challenges, what things we can do to prepare to when our brain gets to that point, then we can help our brain recognize the similarities and have our energy bars and thus our anxiety come down prior to getting into those situations. Does that make sense? So here's what you can do. Imagine all the scenarios possible, even all the scary ones. Part of our anxiety comes from the fear, right? The fear of the unknown. And in our heads, where fear is louder in the dark, if we can get those fears and all that scariness and all the, whether it's rational or irrational, logical, illogical, if it's real, if it's possible, any of those things, just get them on the table. It is going to be a scary exercise, but just brainstorm and write down everything possible that's in your head, all the possible alternatives you can think of that may or may not be going around in your head or may be going around in your head in the future. Okay, so put all those fears on the table, no matter what they are. No judgment, no probabilities, just all the things, okay? So then, once you have all the things written down, for each of those things, we're talking all of them. For each of those things, write down what would happen if they came true. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would happen to you? Who would you be with? Who would you not be with? What kind of futuristic world would occur if these things were to happen? A few videos ago, we talked about future casting, and we've also talked about the limbic system of the brain and how the hippocampus is responsible for memory and creating those memories, they can also create future memories that your brain can rely on, again, with that, to pick up on those similarities for your brain energy bars to come down and help you to reduce anxiety. So let's engage our limbic system, even in this negative scenario, on what those alternatives could look like when they come true. Okay, so think of all the possible things that could possibly happen if those scenarios come true. So then once you've done that, now is where the planning comes in. Now is where the risk mitigation and thinking of all the things you can do today, now, or, in the future to prevent some of those negative outcomes. So for example, and this is going to be a horrible example, but I think it's a real example. It's something we think about often. What if one of our loved ones gets sick and passes away from COVID-19? Okay? Perfectly reasonable, super scary, probably the biggest fear that we have out there right now. That someone we love gets sick from this disease and dies, and what does that look like for us? Let's say it's your spouse or your partner, and one of the visions that you identify in your scenario planning, your outcomes, is that leaves you in financial ruin because that spouse is your primary breadwinner, the person that brings all the money into your family. So perhaps you think about life insurance. Do you have life insurance on that spouse that can help to mitigate some of the financial losses that might occur if that spouse was to pass away? That kind of thing. So do you see where I'm going? Identify the outcome, identify what it looks like and feels like, and then identify some of the solutions that you can put into place, the risk mitigating measures, the things you can take control over, the stuff you do have control over, the actions you can take to help mitigate some of that negativity should, heaven forbid, those horrible things happen for you in the future. Okay, does that make sense? If you can plan for these things, you can take some control. Feeling like you have a little bit of control over these unknown situations will also help to reduce your anxiety. I always talk about controlling what you can control and let the rest take care of itself. Hope is about taking action over the things we can control to help with that positive expectation of the future. So employing your pathways thinking, intentionally looking for all of these alternatives and solving for problems you don't even have yet will prevent these problems from being as catastrophic, might prevent them from actually happening, and will absolutely reduce your anxiety and your fear if and when you ever get to those places. So use hope theory, you employ your pathways thinking, grow and develop and spend some time intentionally gaming this stuff out. And that will definitely, absolutely help you increase your hopeful future. Thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.